Hi, everyone, and welcome to our demo. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our demo is how to build your own Zillow, a step-by-step demo and Q&A with some of our best industry experts. We are going to run through some of the top tools and solutions that Zillow uses, why they do it, and how you can do the same. My name is Erin Gilbert, and I will be offering some marketing guidance today. I am the VP of Marketing for Onboard Informatics, and I am joined today by two other industry experts, Kevin Matisse. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Erin. Thanks for having me.
Kevin, what is your experience in data and real estate technology?
So I'm the product manager at Onboard, responsible for our APIs. So just really excited to talk a little about how it's easier than you would think to use our APIs to help build your own Zillow.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. And we're also joined by Seth Siegler, who is the founder and CEO of Hoverboard Labs. Welcome, Seth.
Hey, thanks, Erin. Good to be here.
Awesome. And Seth has quite a bit of experience building these types of applications, right?
That's right. Yep. I've used all of the onboard data sets a number of times over the years in both my own startups and for customers, implementing it on their sites and projects.
Great. So for those of you that have any questions on how to actually build some of these solutions, Seth has firsthand knowledge on how to do that. This is our agenda here today. We're going to review 4 major solutions or pages that Zillow implements. We're going to start with the Zestimate, which is otherwise known as an AVM or an Automated Valuation Model. It's essentially a tool that tells people what their home is worth. So we're going to talk through what these types of things look like, what AVMs look like, why people use them, and how you can build your own. We're going to follow that same format not only for the estimate, but also for neighborhood pages, property landing pages, and market overviews. So hopefully today you'll get a good, well-rounded education on some of the things that Zillow implements. This demo is brought to you by Onboard Informatics. While you might not know Onboard, chances are you know some of our clients. We work with some of the largest brands in real estate, delivering data on every property in the country and the areas around those properties. So our clients use this data to build out some of the solutions that we're showing you today. And where they get that data is from our Onboard Developer Platform. This is where the data is located, and Kevin, who's with us, actually runs this platform. So Kevin, do you want to speak a little bit about the developer platform?
Yeah, absolutely. This is really the site that we built to give you access to everything you could need in order to implement with our API. So everything from our data dictionaries to all of our documentation on the APIs. It will show you all of the different data sources. You can sign up for a free API trial for 90 days and start hitting all of our APIs live. Really just any information you would want to know while getting started and implementing the API is here. So feel free to follow along as we go through the webinar today.
Perfect. We're going to be alluding to the developer platform quite a bit today. So just wanted to show everyone at the start where that's located and what that looks like. Let's get back to our presentation and start with our first topic, which is how to build your own Zestimate. So Zestimates, or AVMs, are used to generate seller leads. And why seller leads are so important is because they're really valued by real estate agents. They offer a little bit more control over the sale. Often people who are going to sell their home look for an agent to work with and partner with. People that are looking to buy a home, on the other hand, often just look for properties and aren't as loyal to a specific agent. So when you have a seller, you're in more control. You're likely going to get that commission or that side, and you have, as I mentioned, a little more loyalty than some of the buyer customers that you might attract. So seller leads are really valuable. These are people who are thinking of selling their home, often also are great referrals for you in future. So we have an AVM, people build AVMs. This is Move's Chief Product Officer talking about the value of their AVM. And what they're seeing is about 30% of people that leave their contact information in their AVM end up selling their home within a year. So they view these leads that they get from their AVM as quite valuable. Let's take a look at what AVMs look like, and then Kevin and Seth can go through how you can build your own. This first one is, of course, the most famous. This is called the Zestimate, and it's from Zillow. If you go to Zillow.com, you can see this, and let's see, I'll plug in an address here. This is an address in Boulder, Colorado. It's going to ask here if I'm the owner or if I'm not the owner. And based on that, it's going to give me different information. I am not the owner of this property, so I clicked on that, but it still gives me a lot of information here. So the essential beds and baths. Right up top, they have the Zestimate. They have an ability to receive email updates and notifications. So they're trying to get my information here. They're trying to get my email. They have your basic, as I say, property information. They have a range here. So this range is from 1.3 to 1.7 million, the 30-day change. And I go through all of this because when Kevin and Seth go over how to build your Zestimate, our data and our developer platform have the ability to create a lot of these same features. So this is kind of, I wouldn't call it the gold standard, but I would say like this is the most famous and well-known AVM that's out there. But literally every national portal in real estate is using an AVM of some sort. I wanted to show you Trulia's because this is a format that a lot of regional realtors use, where it's very basic, it's a big picture, and basically just says, how much is my home worth landing page, right? So if I put in the same address here, Kirkwood Place in Boulder, there it is, you'll notice that they don't just give me the information right away. They actually make me fill out my name, email address, and phone number before they even give me the AVM. So I point this out because this is another way when we say we want to collect leads. You don't have to just show the AVM. You could actually hide it behind a lead capture form like Trulia does. So this is another option. And then I would be remiss if I didn't show you our AVM. For those of you that may not be developers and are looking for a more turnkey solution, this leads you to a landing page. And this again is the same property, similar valuation. And this is the kind of information that AVMs are going to have. So property details, purchase history, sales activity, recent home information, and things of that nature. So that in essence is what AVMs are. There are some specific examples and why you might use them for your business. Kevin, do you want to talk about how you get started in building your AVM?
Absolutely. So what you're looking at on this page is actually an example from Redfin. And they do something similar to Zillow and Trulia, just like Aaron went through. Some basics about an address, the beds and baths and square footage. You'll see the AVM there at the top left of the screen, as well as some comparable homes on a map and as some of those photos at the bottom of the image. This is actually all information that you can pull back through the Onboard API. So the all events call, that first API call on the top left, will actually pull back the address, some of the information, beds and baths and square footage, as well as the AVM value, and actually the range and 30-day change that Aaron showed you on the Zillow page. The next part, the comparable sales, you can use what we have is the sales snapshot API call. And what that allows you to do is pull in the address that you're searching for initially and search for a radius around it. You can filter by things like beds and baths, sale dates, so that when you pull back comparables to show your users, you're really looking at comparable homes. And what will return in that API call is things like, again, the beds and baths and square footage, but as well as the most recent sale price and sale date. We'll also return the latitude and longitude so that you could use those coordinates to plot these on a map for your users. Seth, did you want to talk at all about how someone might go ahead implementing this?
Yeah, definitely. So the nice thing about doing this with the Onboard APIs is that you can mix and match them a good bit, like Kevin was talking about. So besides just giving a valuation like Zillow does with their AVM, the Zestimate, you can provide so much more information, so much more value to strike up a conversation. So that's pretty cool. You can even do some types of user interactivity as well to really kind of draw the potential home seller in. Instead of showing this one-size-fits-all price, the Onboard AVM API actually returns a range of prices for each property. So there's like a low-end one for a property that might not be in as good a condition, and a high-end one for one that might be, in absolutely mint condition. All of that information is in the API, so you could even sort of draw the potential home seller in and ask them to enter in some information about their property condition, just as an example of something you can do there. But there's a lot of really kind of neat ways to do it, and they're all really easy to work with for any software developer in any programming language that they might be using.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think one other thing that we'd want to point out is that option of giving your users the ability to say that they're the owner is something that you can also support with the Onboard API. We do have owner information that we connect to addresses. So if you wanted to do things like owner validation, that's something you could do through the Onboard API as well.
And that's really valuable information. I think it's really important too when we talk about the range, because we would be remiss if we didn't mention that EVMs can be rather controversial because sometimes, especially when you're as high profile as Zillow, you get some faulty information or some information that might not be as accurate. The point of AVMs isn't to substitute, a full inspection of a home and really work with a professional in generating, what the true value of your home is. It's really just to start a conversation with potential sellers and kick them to you, the expert, to further that conversation and hopefully become a future client. Let's continue on to our next topic, which are neighborhood pages. So these are pages on a website that don't speak specifically to a property, but rather to the area around that property. So it could be a neighborhood, it could be a city, it could be a zip code, I suppose. But neighborhood pages are a little bit more broad in scope. So why would you want to use neighborhood pages? Interestingly, last year, the National Association of Realtors did their annual study, and they found that the average buyer who goes online takes about 10 weeks and looks around 10 homes before they make a final purchase. Those that went straight to an agent, however, that time was cut less than half. So it was 4 homes on average, and they spent about 4 weeks. And what they concluded in their research is that people that go online to start their home search don't necessarily know what neighborhood they want to live in. And so their search is going to start a little more broadly, and they might start by looking at areas that interest them and then go from there to actually narrow their search to properties that are available. And so if you are looking to attract more home buyers, if you're looking to have valuable content for people just starting their search, having neighborhood pages is a really great way to do that. So let's take a look. We're back to our estimates here at some neighborhood pages. So this is a nice just layout. So I wanted to show this first. This is Nooklin. It's a real estate search. It's in limited areas, mostly major cities. But you can see how they lay out all the specific neighborhoods. And then they even have, how many apartments are in each. So they have a little bit about inventory, but this is really making the experience for the user to pick their neighborhood first and then see what's available second. So you can learn, for example, this is the East Village, which is a small neighborhood in Manhattan. You can learn a little bit more about that neighborhood specifically before looking for properties. That's one example. I also wanted to show Berkshire Hathaway. This is their neighborhood page for a neighborhood in Massachusetts. And they are actually a client of Onboard Informatics. So you can see that they have a lot more robust information on their site. In addition to some drive times, they have some listings. So this is another thing that you can do with demographic information and things like that. Those are neighborhood pages. That's kind of why you might want them, what some examples are. But let's talk about how you build them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the important thing to note right off the bat with neighborhood pages is there's 2 ways that your customers might want to come across them. The first is starting with a property. Say they already have a property they're interested in and they want to learn more about the surrounding area. They could look at it that way, or they could come in and say, this is the kind of area that I'm looking at. give me some information about this neighborhood before I start looking at homes. And the beauty of the Onboard API is we really offer a solution that allows you to search by either method. So on the left, an example that Corcoran actually uses to pull up points of interest in an area is starting with a point and radius search. So you could take a point that is either an address or a point on a map that your users entered and do a radius search of all the points of interest, such as restaurants, grocery stores, shopping, things like that. And we'll pull back information such as the name of the business, the phone number, some of the basics, as well as a lat long so that you could show that on a map. The other way to look at things like demographic information is to search by something like a zip code. So the API call on the right is our area full search that allows you to search by everything from a residential subdivision up to a county level area. And it'll pull back things like age demographic information, income by household, travel times to work, whether or not most people are renting or owning in that area, up to about 387 fields of data returned in our community demographics information. So it's just really important to know that you can be flexible in the flow of your user experience, where you can add in this kind of information at different points that you see as valuable.
Awesome. Seth, you've also built these neighborhood pages?
Yeah, definitely built a good number of these types of neighborhood pages. And it makes sense too, if you really sort of think about it. Online, people tend to search for listings as their first stop, which is just sort of the way that a lot of real estate search sites happen to be structured now. But in real life, that's not really how it works. People decide on a neighborhood first, and then are willing to sort of compromise or find an actual listing or a house that fits based on that neighborhood. Because as we know, real estate's about location first, right? About the schools that are in that area or the vibe of that neighborhood or the points of interest and the coffee shops and things like that are nearby. So that's sort of what you can enable on your site with a really good neighborhood page. You can allow your potential buyers to find an ideal neighborhood first, and then later on find listings that fit within it. The benefit of that is, first of all, more engagement on your site. But the other thing about that is that they'll be a way better lead by the time they contact you if they've gone through that process and been able to really learn about a neighborhood on your site before searching for listings.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would also think that it would really build the credibility of the agent and the brand that you're working with as just a regional expert, because you have all of this information so readily available. Before they even speak to you, you'll be seen as really knowing the area because you have all this in-depth information. All right, so those are neighborhood pages. The next thing we're going to cover are property landing pages. So let's take a look at what a property landing page might look like. And to do that, all you need to do is actually go into Google and search a property. So this is my old house in Seattle. And you can see by just Googling an address what comes to the top. We have Redfin, Zillow, Zillow. All of the national portals are going to float to the top. And so before we even get to what a property landing page is, this is why you have a property landing page. It's because you are going to get much larger online footprint. You're going to get a lot better SEO. You're going to get a lot more organic benefit just simply by having landing pages that have off-market properties as well as those that are on the market. So this property is not for sale. And you can see it has just some basic information on the property. It has some photos, it has some market trends. It of course has lead capture, as any landing page you create should have. A little bit of information about the home and property details, nearby listings, school information. They've actually put quite a bit of information on here. There's a walk score, a transit score, some plugins, some other agents, other listings. You can build out these pages however you'd like, and I'm sure Kevin and Seth are going to go into what features you would want to include. But the important thing is that simply by going from just having listings to having every single property, a page for every single property in your community on your site, you're going to expand your site exponentially. And by doing that, you're going to get noticed not only from Google and Bing and other search engines, but also from prospects and potential clients. So those are property landing pages. Pretty much very straightforward. You know, if you have more pages, HubSpot a year ago did a study, and businesses with 40 plus more landing pages got 12 times more leads per year than those with less than 5 landing pages. And it all comes down to, you know, the more pages you have with relevant content, the more Google will notice, the higher your rank will be, the more people will find you, the more traffic, more opportunities, obviously more sales for you. So it's fairly straightforward. That's why you would want something like this. So let's kind of go into how you would build something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the important thing to know here is that there's really a lot of data that's available for properties, and it's important to know how to slim that down and show really what's important to your users. And as you can see here, Zillow kind of narrowed it down to 9 options for facts and features to show right away. And I think that's just a good thing to understand what your users are looking for and what they want to see, as opposed to just a huge list of data points. The huge list of data points is available, but the beauty is you get to pick and choose what's valuable. So when it comes to API calls, what we allow you to do is search for detailed property information with an address. That address will come in and return things like the year built, beds and baths and square footage, but also some more interesting information like the heating type, the water type of the property, parking information, a little more of that in-depth information that you can pick and choose from. If you're also looking to show things like schools on maybe your property landing page as opposed to a community page, we also give you the ability with this top right API call to search for schools that are within the applicable attendance zone for the property that you're searching. So you can see here what Zillow is doing is saying nearby schools to this property. And what we'd allow you to do is input that address, and then within the attendance zones, return things like basic school information, the name, the address, but also a school rating, how far it is from the property that you're looking at, student to teacher ratios, and a lot of different detailed information that people are interested in when they look at a property. Another important thing to note is we're trying to break up our API calls in a way that are really efficient for your website. So you can see here that Zillow has things like home expenses, neighborhood, and schools. And we've broken that up into 3 different API calls as well. So you can search for schools in one API call, neighborhood data in another, and previous sales transaction history in another, so that you're not having to make all those API calls up front, and you can really just make them when the user selects that section to view the data. Seth, did you want to maybe expand on that a little?
Yeah, definitely. So the sort of one thing that you notice when you Google a property address, whether it's on the market or off the market, is that these big players always come up first, as we saw just a little bit earlier. And part of the reason for that is because these property pages are around all the time, whether the property is actually on the market or not. Google is indexing them, and these pages are seasoned. So you can actually do this exact same sort of thing with these onboard APIs. So it sounds crazy, but the idea is that using a script and an integration, you would actually create, you wouldn't, but your computer would for you, your server would create a property page for every single property in the United States. It would be populated with this information that that is part of the onboard API, so property details. And then when your IDX importer finds that a property is now on the market, you update the property page that you already have with the RETS data, the IDX data, And now what's happened is you're updating a very well-seasoned page on your website that is already indexed by Google. And now you're one of the authorities. Your site is one of the authorities on that address, and it should show up towards the top with the big players and well ahead of your competition locally.
Is there any benefit in terms of this idea of SEO and getting noticed by Google to having more content, like just inundating the page with a ton of information versus just having the basics? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So, so Google tends to ignore what it considers to be duplicate content. So in short, yes. So because if you sort of think about, well, what's duplicate content on my listing detail pages on my site, all of the listing information that's on hundreds of other real estate websites in your local market for that property. Mm-hmm. Right, so everybody's got that same info. If you can augment your page with some contextual information, like this kind of data that you can get from the onboard property APIs, you're well ahead because that's indexable, that's novel and new to Google, and that's what differentiates your site. Besides it being a very well-seasoned page now, since you've got property pages implemented, it's also unique content. So yeah, that's a really good point.
I mean, a lot of this, we're not talking about listings today. We're kind of assuming that, you know, people have that on their site. That's kind of the base, but you could include a lot of this information on your listings page or make this like a template for listings. So you could have more information like nearby schools. I'm just looking at the page, home expenses, whatever. And then you could even click that over to the neighborhood pages that we just talked about. Like you would just get a larger footprint. You just have more pages that are relevant in search and then also relevant for the actual visitor who's searching for the home.
That's right.
Yeah, so all these things kind of fit together, which is cool. Last but not least, we wanted to go over market overview. So what is a market overview? This is a page that doesn't discuss specific home, but rather discusses a specific market. Could be a neighborhood, it could be an area, and talks about the insights if it's a good or bad time to sell. So it talks about maybe the homes that have sold recently, if the prices are trending up or down. So it is a piece of content that's not, again, property specific like the AVM, but a piece of content that really attracts or is valuable to people thinking of putting their home on the market. So again, the benefit to a market overview page is going to be to generate home sellers or to have information that's valuable to home sellers. This is Zillow's market homepage. So this is a market in Seattle. This is Ballard, a small neighborhood in Seattle. You can see this is the blue outline of it. It's not a large area, but they are giving you some market overview information. They are making the assumption, or they're saying this is the hot market right now. You can see it looks very hot, actually. It's since 2013. Thanks, Amazon, that it's going really well. Prices are going up, nearby neighborhoods, listings, and sales. And I know that Kevin is going to speak to this, but we, again, have all of this information available on our developer platform. So this would be another page if you're looking to build out the content that's on your site to attract or engage more home sellers. This is another really great way to do that. So let's talk about what some of the information you need to build out these pages.
Definitely. And I think, you know, as we've been talking about efficient use of APIs, one of the really important things to note is if you make a query on a property in our API, one of the things that's going to get returned is a GeoID. And it will be all of the GeoIDs that property exists within. So when it comes to combining information on a single page, if you wanted to show comparable sales in a market around a property, we're going to return things like the zip code when you do the property search for those basic details. You can then use that zip code in something like our sale trend snapshot, the lower right API call, to search the past 2 years of sale trends within that area. And it'll return things like average home sale prices and the count of home sales on a quarterly, a monthly, or a yearly interval over the past 2 years. So it really provides a smooth flow from property information to market information as a user goes through and understands what that market's like and where they're about to buy their house. again, to comparables are always something important to have on your page, and you can use that address pulled in either from an IDX feed or from the property search that you did earlier on to populate comparable sales in a radius around your home. So trying to provide that seamless flow of data, regardless of whether you're starting at a market or starting down at the property level.
Seth, have you built these market overview pages?
Yeah, definitely. Built a few of these, and this is another just great way to engage users on your site. You know, this is something that could stand alone as a market overview page, but it's also something that could be added to a listing detail page or property page as well, and kind of sort of mixed together to augment that as well. But this is just, you know, this is what people want to see. You know, what is the market like in this particular neighborhood that I'm interested in? Besides all of the, you know, the contextual stuff that we showed before, like, you know, what's nearby, where's the closest coffee shop, you know, what's the market doing? This is what you would, as a real estate agent, talk to somebody about in real life if they had wandered into your office. But since you can't really do that when, you know, when they're just browsing around on your site, this is the next best thing. You know, be able to really show your local expertise.
And I think it's important to note too that even if your target market is not individual people looking for a home and maybe it's an investor, this is really important information that you can build into your product and your portal to help multiple different types of users.
That's a great point too. So with all of these, there's a little bit of development, and I know, Seth, you wanted to kind of go over the JSON response.
Yeah, so to kind of clarify, all of the data tools that we've been talking about today are their actual format is what's known as a RESTful API, which is the industry standard. That's what all, you know, of today's software developers are used to working with. And the best, easiest type of API response that comes from the server is the JSON format, and that's exactly what Onboard provides here. That's why I like it. This is an example of a response from one of the APIs, and you can see that it's nice. Even if you're not a software engineer, you can see that it's nicely organized into different objects where you've got your status object first. This one says success with result. If the property wasn't found, if there was a typo or something like that when you submitted it, it doesn't bug out or crash or something. It'll just say success without result. So if you sort of check to see that it says success with result, you can then go on and dig into it, and you can see all of the juicy information you get about each property. In particular, on that AVM object, you can see what I was talking about before, where the API always returns an estimated value, but also a high value and a low value with a SCR, which stands for score, I believe, which is kind of the confidence score of how accurate the system believes that valuation to be. But that high and low part is the part that I like the best in this particular AVM API. That's why I like this one so much, is because you get that high and low, and then you can build something that draws the user in by asking them, you know, where do you think your house fits in, the high range or the low range, condition-wise, and you know, and that changes the game, really. I mean, it makes it so much better than what they're used to seeing on a site like Zillow, where it just says, hey, here's the value for your property. We don't know what condition it's in, but that's what we think it's worth.
Well, and immediately gets them involved, right? Kind of pulls them in a little bit.
Right.
And by, you know, if they think it's an amazing shape, and they probably do, then the evaluation is going to go up, and they're going to be maybe encouraged to make a phone call.
Exactly.
It's a win-win.
And that's really what it's, and that's really what it's all about, is just creating a conversation, right? You know, creating a conversation with a potential seller.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Before we go, we wanted to provide further contact information. If you have questions, if you want to get in contact with us about anything you heard about today, that's our phone number. Those emails work great. You can always go to our homepage, onboardinformatics.com. And of course, please check out the developer platform. Seth, Kevin, did you have anything to add before we sign off?
Not from my end. I think I just want to say thank you all for joining. And if you have questions on the API or feel like you want to dig into it further, we're always here to help.
Thank you, Kevin, so much for joining. And Seth, do you have anything else to add?
Not really too much. I just encourage everybody to dig into these APIs, and really take full advantage of them. There's a lot of different ways to use them to really increase engagement and generate more leads from your sites.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you both. And thanks everyone for joining today. We will see you next time. Have a great day.